عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله حمد الشاكرين والشكر لله شكر المعترفين المقصرين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحابته ومن استنى بسنته واقتفى بأثره إلى يوم الدين. I want to tell you guys a story. And this is a story of a community member. Not necessarily a community member in our community, but maybe you have someone like this in many different communities. Let's call her, it's a story of a girl. Let's call her maybe Fatima, maybe Zainab. Let's call her Zainab. Okay, it doesn't matter what the name is, but I want you to listen to the story because this is a very familiar story. Okay, so Zainab, her parents before she was born, mashallah, they're religious. Zainab's father, he's part of the community. He comes for Fajr. Mashallah, he's got a prayer mark on his forehead because of the sujood he makes. Mashallah, he's got a big beard. They're like really practicing Islam inwardly and outwardly. He gives donation to the Masjid. He's very serious. And he's trying to get, they're working towards having a child. They're ready to have a child. And, eventually Allah blesses them with a child. And they name her Zainab or Fatima, right? Let's just call her Zainab for now. So this girl that grows up, she's so sweet, she's adorable, she's the center of attention. They love her so much. And they spoil her rotten. Everyone loves her. They give her whatever she needs. She's never short of anything in her life. They give her whatever toys she wants. She grows up And, she's following mom and dad. And like I said, they give her whatever she needs. She's never deprived of anything. They love her so much. She grows up at 5 years old. She gets a tablet. She gets a computer. She might get a phone. She grows up. She then goes to Islamic school, or maybe even she's homeschooled because the mom and the dad, they want to ensure that their child is raised in the correct environment. So they shelter Zainab. So she's very sheltered. But you know what? There's one problem though, is that her parents, they enroll her in a Quran program, Quran memorization program. So she knows how to read Quran from a very early age. But you know what? Mom and dad don't really teach her anything. She doesn't know anything. She's completely ignorant about Islam. She grows up, and when people ask her why she's a Muslim, she says, oh, because my parents raised me as a Muslim. She starts to wear hijab at a very early age because, mom and dad, they want to make sure that she starts off wearing the hijab before she's a teenager so that, she's used to it. So she dresses just like her mom. She wraps it just like mom wraps it. And she grows up. And why does she wear it? She wears it because this is just what I've been doing. As far as I can remember, mom and dad, they put this hijab on me wherever I go. Zainab is now 10 years old, 11 years old. She is going to an Islamic school. Dad thinks that, Alhamdulillah, I'm putting my child in a good environment. I'm putting my child in Islamic school. So, inshallah, she's going to turn out really great. But I'm telling you something. As someone who taught in Islamic school for almost a decade, okay, it doesn't matter how good the school is. Sometimes all it takes is just one rotten kid in the class to cause a lot of corruption that even the teachers don't see. When they're in their recess time, they're at lunch period, and they're all hanging out, sometimes it just takes one rotten kid, one kid who has a filthy environment at home to introduce horrible things to your kids. But no, Zainab's father, right? He doesn't think about these things. Remember, he doesn't teach her anything. He enrolls her in a Quran class taught by a Quran teacher from his country back home. Okay? But Zainab doesn't really know much. She doesn't know about the Prophet ﷺ. She doesn't know about his life. She grows up. Now she goes into elementary school. She goes into high school. It's Islamic school, great environment. Oh, and Zainab, she's on social media, of course. She's on social media. She's on, chatting here, chatting there. She's on all of these. She's on Reddit, okay? She's on Discord, all of these different apps and platforms and sites. She's an expert. Mom and dad, for them, it's not a big deal, right? Zainab grows up now, and now it's time to go to college. Now, Zainab, her whole life, she was living in such a sheltered environment. Everything was sheltered. If she had a dentist appointment, dad would go with her, wait for her, or maybe even go into the office, wait for her, and then come back home. She didn't take any public transportation or Ubers like by herself. She's very sheltered, very sheltered. But remember, mom and dad don't really teach her anything. Now it's time to go to college. And Zainab, she goes to, I don't know, just whatever colleges around her house. And now she moves from a very sheltered environment into a very wild environment. There's college parties, all sorts of craziness. And it's like a big culture shock. Zainab feels very weird, very strange. But now it's like, all right, she has new friends, right? A lot of non-Muslim friends. And, she goes through life like this, and eventually the pressure is too much. She takes off the hijab, right? And of course, she can't have a boyfriend because that's haram and she would shame her family. But, she graduates college and maybe she meets a non-Muslim guy, right? She meets a non-Muslim guy and she runs away. She may or may not leave Islam. She doesn't wear the hijab anymore. She runs away with a non-Muslim guy. And then her mother and father, they're thinking, subhanallah, where did I go wrong? Where did I go wrong? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to just pick on girls here, okay? Because boys do the same thing. But I feel like a lot of times we're very strict with the girls, right? We put the girls in the private school, we put the girls in the Islamic school, but the boys can go in the public school. We think that somehow boys are just going to be, better. But oftentimes, they're just as worse. They become misguided the same way, but it shows a little different. So this is something that's for boys and girls, but I'm just giving you a scenario here. Now, this story right here, I'm sure we all know this story. Okay, there's a Zainab maybe in each one of our families, okay, or communities or extended families. We all know someone like this. At least one person, at least one youth who grew up like this. Now, let's talk about some of the problems. What leads to a situation like this? I mean, you could already tell where the parents went wrong, but let's mention, I'm going to mention 5 problems that we as a Muslim community have when it comes to dealing with a situation like this and creating a situation like this. Number 1 is that when Zainab goes off and she runs away with a non-Muslim boyfriend and she's like 20, 22 years old, remember, Zainab used to wear hijab. Oh, and she was really good in school. She was like an A+ student. She was very good in her Quran class. Her tajweed was extremely good. You know, when she runs away with the boyfriend, a non-Muslim boyfriend, when she's 22, you know what the family are going to say? They're going to say, oh my God, Zainab changed. She was such a sweet girl. She was wearing a hijab. She was in the halaqah, the masjid. She would go for tarawih. She would even bake some cupcakes for iftar. What a sweet little girl. Look how she changed. Look how she changed. This is the first foolish thing that people do. Is that they say that, look, she changed. I'm telling you something right now. 9 out of 10 cases of this story happening, she doesn't change. She's the same exact girl that you remember when she was 14 or 15 years old and she was doing all of the stuff that you thought were great. She's the same person, really. She's the same exact person, same mentality. There's almost no difference in most cases. So then why is there a difference? Well, I'll tell you. Number 1 is that there wasn't the opportunity, like the opportunities that presented themselves to her when she is 20 or 22 years old are not the same opportunities that are going to be presenting themselves to her when she is 14 or 15. Because remember, at 14 or 15 years old, she's sheltered, she's at home, she doesn't know any of this, right? But now, after sheltering her for 18 years, you then throw her into college and she starts working and it's like this big culture shock, right? She didn't have the same opportunities when she was 14, 15, or 16, but they're there when she's 20 or 22. So we say, oh, what changed? She could have had the same mentality. In most cases, they have the same exact mentality. Number 2 is that if your Islam is only because of your environment, like I said, a lot of our Muslim kids, right? May Allah protect our kids, ameen. But this is just a reality. A lot of our kids, when we ask them, why are you a Muslim? Why are you a Muslim? What are they going to say? Because I'm raised as a Muslim. And you know what? When your Islam is only because of your environment, when that environment changes, guess what's going to change as well? Islam is going to change as well. A lot of us, we teach Islam the way that we teach our cultures back home. From whatever country we come from. You know, we have a lot of beautiful countries we come from, no doubt about that. We have beautiful cultures. But we, oftentimes as parents, we treat Islamic as part of our culture. When your kids go out in the public life, and they're meeting all of these different kids, do they wear their culture on their chest? Do they speak the language that you speak back home, that you try to speak in the house? Do they speak it to their friends? No. Anything that makes you different in this environment is something that people are going to bully you on. They're going to look at you weird. And if a child's only reason for practicing Islam is because of the environment at home, guess what? That's not going to be strong enough as a reason for them to practice Islam in an environment where everybody's going to look at them like they're weird. Why are you wearing that on your head? Aren't you hot? Oh, why aren't you participating in our Christmas party or whatever, right? It's going to make them feel uncomfortable. When your Islam is only because of your environment at home, and you grow up like this, that's the only reason why you're Muslim, and your environment changes, oftentimes the Islam is going to change as well. So that's the first problem we have as a Muslim community, is we say, oh my God, what changed? In most cases, there was no change mentally. It's just that now she's doing things, now he's doing things at 20, 22 years old that they didn't have the opportunity to do when they were 14 or 15. Because they were living under their parents' house. Of course, they're not going to get a non-Muslim boyfriend or girlfriend or smoke weed or do all of this kind of stuff, right? Number 2, the second problem we have as a Muslim community is oftentimes when a situation like this happens, guess what the parents do? Oh, she's running away with a non-Muslim boyfriend. What are we going to do? We're going to disown her. We're going to disown her. Don't ever call me back again. You're not my daughter. You're not my son. And we think as Muslim parents that, oh my God, our kids, they've shamed us. What are the grandparents going to say? What's the family going to say? The only way I can justify this to myself is if I just disown my child. So don't call me again. Don't call me dad anymore because you went astray. And we think that's going to make the situation better. We think that just tricking them to go back home and then keeping them back home in our country, we think that that's going to be a solution. Oftentimes, all of this makes things worse. But we do foolish stuff like this. We think it's going to actually fix the situation. Number 3, the third problem we have with a scenario like this as a Muslim community is that oftentimes the parents, I would say most cases when this kind of scenario happens, in most cases, parents, they don't take responsibility. They don't take responsibility for their failure towards their kids growing up. You know what they say? This is what the dad does, right? After his daughter runs away with a non-Muslim boyfriend and all of this, like whatever else happens, right? The parents, they read the Quran and they read the story of Lut alayhi salam. And Lut alayhi salam, as we know, his own wife went against him. When you read the people, these parents, they read the story of Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh alayhi salam, as he was on the ark, he was telling his son, come on the ship with me, right? Come on the ship with me. And the son, he chose to disbelieve in Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh alayhi salam, his own wife as well, disbelieved in him. So what some parents do is they read these stories, they say, subhanallah, look, even the prophets, right? My kids went astray, even the prophets. Right? Even Lut alayhi salam couldn't guide his own son. Even Nuh alayhi salam couldn't guide his own son. Even Lut and Nuh couldn't guide their own wives. Even Ibrahim couldn't guide his own father. And we say, oh, guidance truly is only in the hands of Allah. You know what this is? This is a nice, sweet, cute story we like to tell ourselves and lie to ourselves to not admit the responsibility that we were supposed to fulfill towards our kids. We try to think that we're like Lut alayhi salam and Nuh alayhi salam and these prophets who their kids went astray. Okay, you think you're like Nuh alayhi salam? You think you're like Lut? Was Nuh alayhi salam and Lut letting their kids watch porn when they forgot about them and not paid any attention to them? Did Nuh alayhi salam abandon his kids and not spend any time with his kids and just assume that everything's gonna be okay? Did Nuh alayhi salam, did he just let his kids chat with pedophiles and predators on Discord and all of this Telegram and all of these different things? Did they leave their kids on social media, on TikTok to watch that stuff all day to program their minds? Did they let their kids do that? If they did, then you could say you're like Nuh alayhi salam. But let's stop lying to ourselves. So this is the third problem, is that we don't take responsibility for stuff like this when it happens to our family. We think that, oh yes, we're just like the prophets. Look, they did whatever was in their power to protect their kids. Only if we do that, we can say that we're like them. Number 4 is that when raising our kids, like this is a very scary scenario that I outlined in the beginning of the khutbah, right? We all don't want this to happen to our kids. But in order to prevent this from happening to our kids, what's the most common parenting strategy that we use to get our kids on the right track? What's the most common parenting strategy? Fear-mongering, fear tactics, and shaming them. When our kids, usually when they're like 6, 7 years old, what are they gonna do, right? The problems really happen when they become a teenager and they start to think for themselves, right? And all of the programming from Netflix and all of the shows, that's when it really comes out, when they're 14, 15, and onwards. When your kid is 14 or 15, right? And they start doing things that now it's like a big problem. Now the hijab, it starts coming off. Or the boy, he starts hanging out with the wrong crowd. What do? They stop praying salah. What's the number one tactic that Muslim parents use? Fear. How can you do this? You're gonna embarrass us. Are you really gonna be like them? Are you really gonna end up like people like this and that? Allah will punish you. You wanna go to Jahannam? You want Allah to punish you with the fire? This is the most common strategy that parents use. And I understand, it's like you're trying to encourage your good, you're trying to encourage good to your kids, right? You're trying to get them on the right track, and a lot of us don't have a lot of knowledge, so we use fear. But this is the problem with that, is that when we look at the parenting strategies of our parents back home in whatever countries we came from, those same parenting strategies are not necessarily going to work here in this land, in this country. What do I mean by that? If we come from a Muslim country or not even a Muslim country, but a country that has an Islamic environment, and we as parents grew up in those environments. When you grow up in an environment like this, do you have to be well versed in Islamic knowledge to grow up in these environments and to have Islamic values? The answer is no. You could be totally ignorant. But these surroundings, they facilitate Islamic values. You grew up in a Muslim community. You don't need to know Islam in order to practice the Islamic values, right? You could be totally ignorant. And usually fear works in that situation. Parents can just, shame their kids into doing the right thing and avoiding the wrong thing. But a lot of us, we want to come to America now, where the environment is only going to be pulling them away from Islamic values, but we want to instill in them the same fear that our parents instilled in us. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. What's going to work? Educating them, teaching them, right? Cultivating, Islam from within. That's the only thing that's really going to truly help our kids. Number 5, the fifth problem that a lot of parents have is that they wait until it's too late to teach their kids. They wait until it's too late to start incorporating Islamic values. And this is the problem. A lot of parents, they wait until it's so late, and one of the solutions that they think is going to help is by coming to the masjid. I'm going to bring my 17-year-old son so that the imam can talk to him. You know how many times that even for me this has happened? People come and they say, Sheikh, Imam, can you talk to my daughter? Can you talk to my son? He's already like 17 years old. He's already got his mind made up. He's already mentally like an adult. She's already mentally like an adult. They're planning their escape plan after they're 18 years old. And you want to bring them when they're 17 years old to the masjid so that the imam can work some miracles. This is a problem. And I'm not saying don't bring your kids to the masjid. I'm not saying that, right? Don't get me wrong. But the problem I'm highlighting is why wait till your kids are so old? They have no Islamic values. They don't know anything. But now when they start to fall out of line when they're 15 or 16, that's when you want to bring them to the masjid so the imam can work some miracles and talk to them. And somehow, whatever the imam is going to tell them is going to make them have a change of heart. It may or may not. Allah knows best. But the problem I'm highlighting is why wait that long? You need to start when they're small, when they're young, to start cultivating Islamic values. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us all. Allahumma ameen. And to guide our community. Ameen. And to guide our youth and our children. Ameen. And to guide us as parents and elders as well. Allahumma ameen. أقول ما تسمعون واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى وصلاة الله وسلامه على عباده الذين اصطفى وبعد. Look, the scenarios that I've highlighted, like I said, I think we all have a scenario like this in our immediate family or extended family, or we know of a situation like this where kids are just going astray like this. And it's scary, I understand. But what are some solutions? What do we do? What do we do to fix this problem? What do we do so that we can actually parent our kids in a successful way so that they grow up and we have fulfilled our responsibilities towards them? What can we do? Number 1 is to actually teach your kids. And when I say teach your kids, I don't mean just enroll them in a Quran program online with a teacher from your country. That's not what I mean. Look, getting our kids to memorize Quran and to learn Quran, that's important, no doubt about that. Okay, we should get our kids to do that. But you know what? I know a lot of kids who can recite Quran better than all of us sitting in this room who don't believe in Allah. In New York, in our Islamic school, I had one student. He came in the school and he was in 6th grade. And his parents, they put him in a boarding school. It's like a Quran memorization boarding school in upstate New York. And this kid, he came to our school, I think in the 6th or 7th grade. And this kid, he came into school with like a lot of shubuhat, a lot of doubts. And I sat this kid down trying to explain to him. I was his Islamic studies teacher. I tried to explain things to him. And alhamdulillah, I answered all of his questions. And after I answered all of his questions, he started to open up to me about his experience at that boarding school. He told me that how he started to dislike the Quran. So I said, why? Why would you dislike the Quran? He said, because my Quran teachers, they were so strict with me. I didn't understand anything I was reading. And they would hit me when I made a mistake, when I couldn't memorize. So they would like force it on me, and my parents, they didn't help me either. It was a boarding school. And he said, I started to dislike the Quran. This kid could recite very beautifully. And you know what? I sat down with him and I answered his questions. You know what he said to me? He said to me something that's very heartbreaking. He said, brother, nobody ever sat me down like this and explained things to me. It's all just like parroting. We want our kids to be like parrots. Allah Azza wa Jalla, when he talks about the Israelites who were given the Torah, they were entrusted to uphold the Torah. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says that these people who did not fulfill the responsibility of upholding the Torah, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says that they are like كَمَثَلِ الْحِمَارِ يَحْمِلُ أَسْفَارًا. They're like donkeys carrying books on their backs. When you know how to recite the scripture, but you don't understand it at all, you don't practice it at all, but you can read it really well. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He likens that to a donkey that's carrying books on his back. And a lot of us, we think that that's going to teach our kids Islamic knowledge. Where in reality, Allah musta'an, may Allah protect us, some of us are raising donkeys. We're raising parrots. They can recite really well, but they have no idea what the book says. And if a parent goes through their child's life like this, just teaching them how to read Quran, but teaching them nothing about what it says, what it means, and why it's the truth, that's a failure of parenthood. May Allah Azza wa Jalla protect us. Allahumma ameen. But a lot of us, let's be real here. For some Muslim families, the Quran is really just like a trophy. Right? The Quran is like a trophy. We want to have a hafiz in the family. So when we go to the weddings or the family gatherings, we can say that we have a hafiz in the family. This is reality for some families. It's just a trophy. We want to show the grandfather that, you know what, me as his son, right, with his grandkids, I want to show that our family, we have a hafiz in the family. I know some people who have memorized the whole Quran, and some people don't believe in it. I know some people like this. They don't believe it, but their parents really push them to memorize. So once again, don't get me wrong, memorizing Quran is great. Learning to recite Quran beautifully, this is important. But is this the ultimate priority when it comes to guiding your kids? Number two, the second thing after teaching them is to learn yourself. You see, a lot of parents, they enroll their kids into Quran programs, into Islamic studies programs. But a lot of parents, they think that what? This is only for the kids? Memorizing Quran and learning Quran is only for kids? This is how a lot of parents think, is that let's put the kids in these programs. Let's push the kids to do this. What about you as a parent? If you're pushing your kid to learn Islam and to learn Quran, but you don't do it, guess what kind of message that sends to your kids? The message that sends to your kids is that it's important enough for them to do it, but not important enough for you to do it. That's the message that it sends. It's not that important when you become an adult, because it's just for kids. So we need to stop this as a community where we really only focus on kids learning. A lot of times, parents, we need to learn more, because the more you learn, the more you practice, the easier it's going to be for your kids. But a lot of us, we're sending mixed signals to our kids. And you know what's really sad is when you have parents who know they have knowledge. They have knowledge. They graduated from Islamic universities. They've memorized the Quran themselves, but they don't teach their kids anything. There's one young brother, he was asking me for some advice. Right? A young teenage brother. And he was asking me for some advice, and you know, he was asking me all of these questions, but his father is an imam, his father's a sheikh. I said, listen man, why don't you ask your father? Like, your dad is right there. You literally live with your dad. You know what he told me? Something else is heartbreaking. He said that my dad doesn't teach me anything. Look how sad that is. Imagine, it's understandable if you don't have any knowledge as a parent, but you have knowledge as a parent, and your kid has to go to somebody else saying that my dad doesn't teach me anything. That's another example of how sometimes we fail our kids. A lot of times we focus on the Quran classes, but our kids don't know who Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is. A lot of kids have no idea what his life was about, what his mission was about, but they definitely know about the anime they're watching, and they know about the sports athletes, and they know what the score of the football game last week was. They know exactly what's going on with that. So we need to teach our kids, and we need to learn ourselves. Number three is to practice Islam. Actually practice Islam yourself. It's not enough to teach your kids. It's not enough for you to just learn, but you have to practice as well. You have to practice Islam as well. You have to make it something that's real, something that's actual in your family, that Islam is something real. It's not just for the masjid, it's not just for out there. It's not just our appearance, but it's how we act, even in the house as well. This is difficult, but you know what? This is what we have to do as parents, especially raising our kids in this environment. Number 4 is all of the previous 3 things are great. But you know what's also very important as well is actually spending time with your kids. Actually being there for your children, developing a relationship with them. A lot of our kids, they feel so uncomfortable around us. We don't have that relationship with them that they're afraid to tell us things. When you read Surah Yusuf, and you read how Yusuf alayhi salam, as soon as he got a dream, who did he go to? He went to his father. He went to Yaqub. He had that close relationship to that extent that he could confide things in his father. We need to actually be there for them, spend time with them. It's not enough to just let a tablet raise your kid or a phone to raise them. That's not enough. That's why you have the stuff we have in the story that I told you about in the beginning of the khutbah. That's why you have a lot of those stories, because we don't develop a relationship with our kids. When they go astray, now we want to start talking to them. Now we want to be close to them. You need to start from an early age, develop that close relationship. Number 5, doing all of these things is not a guarantee that your kids are going to be guided. A lot of us, we say, well, if I do all of this, my kids can still be misguided, like the children of Nuh alayhi salam and these prophets, right? Their kids became misguided. You see, it's not about guiding your kids or putting guidance in the hearts of your kids. That's not what it's about. What it's about is fulfilling your responsibility in front of Allah. Nuh alayhi salam, towards his son, he fulfilled that responsibility. But a lot of us, we like to think that we're like those prophets while neglecting our responsibility towards our kids. So look, doing all of these things, teaching them, practicing Islam and learning yourself, doing all of this stuff is not a guarantee that Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to guide them. But it's so that you fulfill your responsibility in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And last but not least, continue to make dua for them. Continue to make dua for your children. Constantly ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to guide them and to guide you and to guide your families. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us all. Ameen. And to guide our families, to guide our children, to guide our community. Allahumma ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq, the success, to fulfill our responsibilities towards ourselves and towards each other. Allahumma ameen. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. وأقيم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Straighten the rows, close the gaps. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شداد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. يا أيها الذين كفروا لا تعتذروا اليوم إنما تجزون ما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا توبوا إلى الله توبة نصوحا عسى ربكم أن يكفر عنكم سيئاتكم ويدخلكم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار يوم لا يخزي الله النبي والذين آمنوا معه نورهم يسعى بين أيديهم وبأيمانهم يقولون ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. يا أيها النبي جاهد الكفار والمنافقين واغلظ عليهم ومأواهم جهنم وبئس المصير. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط كانتا تحت عبدين من عبادنا صالحين فخانتاهما فلم يغنيا عنهما من الله شيئا وقيل ادخلا النار مع الداخلين. وضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون إذ قالت رب ابن لي عندك بيتا في الجنة ونجني من فرعون وعمله ونجني من القوم الظالمين. ومريم ابنة عمران التي أحصنت فرجها فنفخنا فيه من روحنا وصدقت بكلمات ربها وكتبه وكانت من القانتين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Just a few quick announcements, inshallah. Number one is that we have our youth program coming up. This is going to be next Friday on the 22nd at 6 p.m. Not tonight, but next Friday, inshallah, we're going to have our youth program. Make sure that you guys sign up your kids for that, inshallah. Really, it's open for everyone, inshallah. But make sure that you guys sign up. It's going to be from 6 p.m. The topic that we'll be discussing is how to maintain strong faith despite our surroundings that sometimes make it difficult, especially as youth living in this country and in this environment. We'll be discussing, of course, some of the things that we're talking about in today's khutbah in this session, inshallah. So make sure that you guys come.